Thank you. So quick introduction from me. My name's Andy Hemming. I'm an action coach, business coach. What does that mean? That means I work with the owners of small to medium-sized businesses in various capacities, sometimes in group coaching, sometimes in one-to-one coaching. What I do is I help them get from where they are to where they want to be in their business. That can be in any aspect. This afternoon I'm going to talk with you about sales. Alison asked me to speak because she's been on some action coach courses actually, so I'm trying to cram about a half-day course into 45 minutes. That means you're going to have to write real fast. There's going to be stuff that I haven't got enough time to cover with you, but you could go Google it and go find it out, because all the stuff that I talk about in our intellectual property, most of it's out there, you just got to know where to look. So I'm going to point you in the right direction if that's okay. So there's going to be a heck of a lot of stuff, so just get writing. Normally I position people quite well at these things. I'm going to do it real quickly. Anybody know what the two most expensive words in business are? VAT. That's 3. Any other ideas? No? Well, no's one of them, but it's spelt K-N-O-W. The other one is I know. Okay? Because what does an I know attitude do? Precludes any opportunity for learning. So what I'm going to ask you today as I talk through all this stuff at whirlwind pace is, rather than saying to yourself, that won't work in my business, what I want you to do is go, isn't that interesting? How could I make that work for me in my business? It's a very different outlook. So is everybody okay with that? The other principles that I've got to leave those alone because I haven't got time to cover them. Come to 90-day planning afterwards. I might talk about some of those. Alternatively, after 45 minutes, you might be sick of me and you might choose to go somewhere else. That's okay too. Right, so we better crack in. Take a piece of paper. What are the first 3 words that come to mind when I say salesperson? Write them down. I'm only going to give you 10, 15 seconds. Maybe 20. I'm feeling generous. What are the first 3 words that come to mind when I say salesperson? Write them down quickly, guys. You've got to put it on a piece of paper in front of you. When you finish, look up. Anybody still looking down, I'll imagine that they're still writing. If you're looking up, then it's all good. I'm going to move on. Those of you still looking down, do faster. Can I move on? Fantastic. And the next 3, customers. First 3 words that come to mind when I say customers. Write those down, please. Everybody got 3 of each? Anybody not got 3 of each? Fantastic. Share with me some of the stuff that you wrote down for salesperson, please. Just shout them out. Whoa, not all at once. Meltdown. Right, can we have a quick show of hands and I'll just pick some? Yes.
Pushy, not wanted.
Pushy, not wanted. Thank you. Others?
Confident.
Confident. Fantastic. Over there? Pick one. Driven. Thank you. Commission-based, fantastic. False, fantastic. Well presented, thank you. At the back? Friendly, fantastic. Any others? Professional, fantastic. Any others? Knowledgeable, great. Any others? There's quite a wide range there, isn't there? What about customers? Throw some of those out for me. Hands again rather than everybody all at once. Unaware. At the front again. Buying. Varied. Informed. Prospects. Opportunity. Potential. Important. Great. Go on, one more.
That was just the same as that imperative.
Okay, fantastic. I want you to take a look at the piece of paper in front of you now, because what I heard there, when we talk about customers, it tends to be quite positive, doesn't it? All those words are quite positive. Now look at the things that you wrote down about sales and listen to some of the things that got said. Pushy. Forceful. There was lots of professional, there was lots of all that kind of stuff in there as well. But look at the 3 words that you wrote down in front of you. Now, are they positive or are they negative? What's your perception about sales? How many of you think that it's a negative perception? Right, thank you. Look at that. That's well over half the room. Who loves selling? Who loves selling? I tell you what, this is unusual actually, 50-50 in the room. But Fantastic. What I want you to think about is, how do your beliefs about selling shape how you present? Because if you think pushy, what are you going to be doing when you're selling? Possibly. Or maybe you step so far back from pushy that you don't even ask for the sale. Does that make sense? You need to be thinking, guys, if you want to be really successful salespeople, you've got to start with a set of positive beliefs about selling. So what I want to do today is try and reframe some of that for you, because it's really important that we get in our head how cool sales is, right? Go back and reassess your beliefs. Really think about what you wrote down. Those need to be 3 really positive things. Now, 8 years ago when I started my business, I came out with all that kind of stuff, pushy and forceful and shiny suit and used car salesman and all those negative things. But I really trained hard in sales. And now I love selling. I absolutely love selling. And I'll tell you why in a minute. There are 4 types of salesperson. The first one is the order taker. I guess somebody in McDonald's you might class as an order taker. They're just standing there waiting for you to place their order. Yeah? So just wait for somebody to ask if they can buy. So that's the first type of salesperson. Here's the next type. The product pusher. The product pusher, all they're going to talk about, the product pusher, all they're going to talk about is the product and how cool the product is. The third type, the overseller, promises the world just to get the sale. Come across any of those? Some giggles down the front here. Guess that's a yes. And then the problem solver. So the problem solver is helping the customer find what they need. Now, based on those 4 definitions, I want you to write down on the piece of paper in front of you, what type of salesperson are you? Are you a order taker, product pusher, overseller, or problem solver? How many order takers? You're amongst friends, it's okay to admit to it. Go on, because you can change. How many order takers? There's a couple of hands sort of waving. How many product pushers? Couple. How many oversellers? How many problem solvers? Here's where all hands go up. Yeah, right. Let's see, shall we? Let's see. Okay, wouldn't it be great to be a problem solver? And if you are, congratulations. If you are, congratulations, seriously. But if you think about this, I mean, take it back. The amount of negative perceptions we've got about our sales experience is why? Because we've been sold to badly plenty of times, way more often than we've had a great buying experience. Because we all love to buy, don't we? But we hate to be sold. So this is where we sort of start to transition to our definition of selling. And this is why I love selling, professionally helping other people to buy. Now, could you grow to love selling if that was your definition? Could you change that set of beliefs that you wrote down at the front if you thought, I'm actually professionally helping people to buy? Some of the words that came out over here, in terms of education, in terms of helping people understand what you have to offer, in terms of creating a great customer experience, that's selling. That is professional sales. And this takes a bit of a mindset flip, actually. I just want to go into that briefly. A lot of us, and when we start our business, and actually some of us perpetuate that for quite some time, we have what I'd call a scarcity mentality. So if somebody gets in front of us, we've got to sell to them. Checkbook and pulse, great. Yeah? Well, that's what it is when you start your business, isn't it? You've got a checkbook, you've got a pulse, right? That's the 2 major A-grade criteria. Write the check. But as time moves on, and we start to grow our client base, what it's good to step back and realise is, well, actually, an abundance mentality is quite good. So if I educate you and find out your needs and the two of those are compatible, and you buy from me, then I probably get a great client. If I sell to you, chances are I'm probably not going to get a great client. Does that make sense? So when we set about professional selling, it's about professionally helping other people to buy. So how do we do that? It's all about communication, isn't it? But we need to go a bit deeper into communication. Give me some definitions. What's communication?
Listening.
I'm sorry? Listening, absolutely. Sorry, I wasn't listening. What else? Information, okay. What else? Okay, absolutely.
Building relationships.
Yes, indeed. So, here's our definition of communication. This comes from NLP. Has anybody come across neuro-linguistic programming? One of the presuppositions of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is this. True communication is the response we get. True communication is the response we get. Now, the example I always use for this is being a bit of a facetious kind of chap. I know you'd find that hard to believe, but being a bit of a facetious kind of chap. I used to sort of throw comments out there that were supposed to be sort of humorous, and people used to take them in sometimes the wrong way. And the first thing I'd do is go, "You bloody idiot, I didn't mean it like that." Because I was nice like that. But the point is, what that says about my communication is that it was ineffective because I didn't get the response that I expected. Okay? So if I'm going to take ownership for my communication, then really what the question should be is, what was it about my communication that caused that response? What was it about my communication that caused that response? Because I didn't get the response I was looking for. Now, if you think about sales, it's all about communication. We're going to get a response. You close them or they close you. Yeah? That's what happens. Somebody makes a sale, it's either you or them. They sell you that they're not buying, or you sell them that they are. So we've got to be really hot with our communication. So there's 3 parts to communication. You may have seen this before. Words, voice, body language. Okay? So the first thing we need to think about is, actually, how do we use our words? Least important. How do we use our tonality, our voice? And how do we use our body language? You see, if I was to stand at the front of the room right now and go, "Well, it's a real pleasure to be here, and I've been really looking forward to speaking with you," would you believe me? Probably not. "Well, it's great to be here. I've been really looking forward to speaking with you." So it's getting a little bit more convincing. But if it's great to be here and I've really been looking forward to speaking with you, it's a different feeling, isn't it? So my body language changes the most. So when we're talking with people, we really need to start thinking about, how do we get in rapport? Has everybody come across that idea, getting in rapport with somebody? And we need to use both our voice and our body language, because that's how communication is formed. Words make up the smallest part of communication, then the tonality that we use, and then our body language. So we need to really use all parts of the 3 parts of communication to get in rapport with somebody. And then what we need to do is actually match and mirror them. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean copy them, but if they're standing in a certain way, you can stand in a certain way too. You can use your voice in the same way as they do. So if they're talking slowly, in a considered fashion, with lots of pauses, you can do the same. If they're quite excited and they're talking quite fast and quite animated and using lots of body language, you can do the same. Because then they'll see themselves in a mirror and they'll go, "Cool, I really like this person because they're just like me." That's how our subconscious works. Now, you don't have to copy these people. You don't have to completely copy them. But if you reflect back on them, what their tonality and what their body language is, they're going to stand there and they're going to go, "Oh, I really like this person because they're just like me." Now, this isn't manipulation, by the way. This is actually treating somebody as they would like to be treated themselves. Notice that's a bit different from the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. elevate that up one level, treat others as they would like to be treated. So if they're animated, if they're talking fast, if they're all excited, why shouldn't you be too? They want a reflection of themselves. Does that make sense? But if they're more considered, and if they're a bit slower and less animated, then you should be too. Because they don't want some Labrador puppy jumping all over them, trying to make a sale. You know, that's the way it is. So match and mirror. And then we move on to sort of, and by the way, Google all this stuff, because I know I'm flying through it. But you can go and read about this. Modalities of communication is the next thing. We are all visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Visual is primarily visually based. Auditory is primarily hearing based, and kinesthetic is feelings. Now, you can normally look at somebody and tell what they are, because visual people, guess what? They tend to be quite smartly dressed. Kinesthetic people, they tend to be quite comfortably dressed. And auditory people tend to be a bit scruffier, actually. It's a generalisation, but the thing is, you can pick up what the modality is of somebody by listening to their language. How can you do that? Because if you listen to somebody's language and they talk to you using visual words, how does that look for you? Oh, it's crystal clear. They're primarily a visual person. So what should you do when you ask them questions? So how's that looking? Because if you ask them a question, how does that sound, and they're visual, you're out of rapport with them. Because they're primarily visual and you're talking an auditory language. If they're auditory, does that resonate for you? How does that sound? If they're kinesthetic, how do you feel about that? Let's cast that in concrete. Let's nail that down for you. Feeling type language. And if you're not sure, what do you think? That's the backstop. Couldn't work it out. What do you think? This is all about getting in rapport with somebody. You can hear it in the language that people use. So use it back to them. You just create a much better rapport. They feel more understood. Communication is the response we get. So if you're in rapport with them, I can guarantee you that your communication will be more effective, because you'll get back more of what you want. So go and read about that. There's a tool on the internet called the Language Systems Diagnostic Tool. It's free. You can go and find out what your modalities of communication are, and you can read about this stuff. One of the things that I do is I'm going to throw you lots of information, but you've got to go do some learning on the back of it, okay? But will it help you? Yep. So that's modalities of communication. I'm going to go through DISC with you. Go Google this as well. You can go and take your profile online if you want to. This is another fantastic communication tool. I'm going to take 10 minutes to go through it with you. We can do a day course on this, but you can read about it. Okay? So, DISC is about, has anybody done any of those sort of psychometric profiling type things? You know, Belbin and Myers-Briggs and all that gubbins. Well, they're really interesting, aren't they? You read them and you go, yeah, that's me, and then you put it in a drawer. I did all that stuff when I was in corporate. DISC, we can use it every day for our team, for our prospects, and it's all about recognising somebody's behavioural profile. And I think you might have touched on this in one of your earlier sessions when you were talking about how to respond on emails. Some people like shorter, some people like longer, if you were in that session. I heard somebody mention it earlier. This is all about how to communicate effectively with people when you recognise their profile. So this is DISC. First of all, we're either outgoing or reserved, and then we're either people-focused or task-focused. So to determine somebody's DISC profile, you ask two questions. The first one is this person outgoing or is this person reserved? How do you think you might tell? How would you tell an outgoing person?
Tone of voice.
Tone of voice? So what would it be?
They would be quite loud, quite rough.
Quite loud. And faster? And more tonality? And if you can see them, probably more body language. Right? So if they're Outgoing, they're either a D or an I. Now, I'll tell you what all this means in a second. If they're reserved, they're going to be slower, quieter, less tonality, less body language. Okay? So that's S and C. The next question you ask is this person people-focused or task-focused? How do you think you might tell? What do you think people-focused people will talk about? People. What do you think task-focused people will talk about? Stuff, yeah, things. What will happen when you take a task-focused people and start asking them about their weekend? They'll pull you back to, why are we here? They'll want to get back on task quite quickly. What will happen when you start asking a people-focused person about their weekend? 10 minutes later, you'll still be there. Yeah? Okay? That's the way it works. So it's real simple to determine somebody's DISC profile. You go, are they outgoing or reserved? Right, so they're quite loud, they're quite fast, they're quite a lot of tonality. Right, they're a D or an I. How was your weekend? 10 minutes later, you're still there? Okay, they're an I. Because they're people-focused. So you can get somebody's DISC profile real fast. When you get good at this, as soon as you meet somebody, you'll go, they're a D. You've got to work at it a little bit. So what does D stand for? Dominant, driven, dynamic. It stands for dominant, but these sort of people are quite driven, quite dynamic, quite abrupt, occasionally. Who knows any Ds? Laughter down the front again. I's, influencers. Really people-focused people. Optimists. Persuasive. Okay? S's, steady. Trustworthy, loyal, slow to change, like the status quo. C's, compliant. Detail-focused, like the detail a lot. Quite analytical, like systems and processes. Let's just go real quick through how these guys had learned to swim. High Ds, think about the quadrant that they're in. Outgoing, task-focused. How would they go learn to swim? What do you think they'd do? Jump in. Absolutely. What do you think the I's would do? How would they go learn to swim? In a group. There you go. More concerned with the group activity than actually doing the thing. S's, how would they go learn to swim? Slowly, and they'd want to be taught by somebody they respected because they're still people-focused. C's, how would they go learn to swim? Read a book. You see how easy this stuff is. Absolutely. That's DISC in a nutshell. So what do you need to do? Well, if you can get somebody's DISC profile, rather than communicate to them like a Labrador puppy, if you're a high I, because you will, if you're talking with a C, what are they going to need? Much more detail. To be much slower. More considered. They need proof. They need lots of why. They need to be shown baby steps. Does that make sense? If you're talking with a high I, don't give them the detail. If you come to me and start giving me the detail, I'll just glaze over. I'll just get bored. I don't want it. Just show me how it'll make me more popular with my mates, and I'll go, let's go. It's all good. Now, you're going to have come across people like this when you sell to them, and the more people-focused people will do this more naturally anyway, but this is the system for making it work better for you. This is the system where you go, this person is a high D, I have to focus on showing them how they can get to the result they want faster. That's all they want. This person is a high I, I've got to show them how I can make them look great with the rest of the group of people that they're in with. How I can make them feel popular. High S. These guys, I've just got to show them how we can guide them safely through this, nice and peacefully, without rocking the boat. And these guys, the C's, we've got to give you all the minute detail. So this idea, let's call it the platinum rule. That's what Tony Alessandra, and he's maybe there's a guy that you want to Google, Tony Alessandra, Alessandra. He's sort of the guru on DISC. and you can go and do a disc profile and you'll get a 38-page report if you want to read it. It will give you not only your disc, it will give you 20 pages on disc, so how to really dig into this stuff. If you Google Tony Alessandra, he calls it the platinum rule, and that's the treat others as they would like to be treated. That's what we're talking about here. Modifying your communication and getting in rapport with somebody makes it a damn sight easier to help them buy. To help them buy. Not to sell to them, to help them buy. Who's starting to love selling a bit more? What do you think you'll be as a salesperson when you can do this stuff? Will you be a better salesperson? Okay, but this is only the start, because all I'm doing is showing you how to communicate more effectively, okay, which is a key. Let's think about a sales process. Who's got a sales process in their business? Quick show of hands. Right. So that means if you haven't got a sales process, you do something different every time. Right? If you do something different every time, how do you measure the effectiveness of it? So you can tweak it so that it works better. Business is about having a system. Because what happens when you grow your business and you start to delegate this stuff? You need to be able to hold somebody accountable to do what they say they're going to do and get the results that you're expecting. So you've got to have a system in place. We have a 13-step sales process in Action Coach. I can tell you my numbers at every stage of it. How many leads I need to feed into the funnel at the top to get something out at the bottom. And I know where I lose them along the way. And believe me, because it's a professionally helping other people to buy process, we want people to deselect themselves throughout the process. That's a good thing. Why? Because it saves me time. I don't get in the car and go and see somebody unless they're serious. It's good. We educate people and we help them buy. You've got to get that into your head. But the start of your sales process, think about your normal sales meeting. Who controls it? Who's in control? The prospect or you? Who thinks the prospect? So you're all in control of your sales meeting, is that right? Fantastic. Do you have a purpose statement? This is a purpose statement. You may have heard the adage, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. That's a sales adage, right? So for me, whenever I go and meet somebody, I go, is it okay if I outline how we make the best use of today's time? What do you think they're going to say? Yes. Yeah, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? Okay. First of all, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. If you need it, I've sent you a profile, but if you don't need that, we'll just move on. Secondly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a load of questions about your business, where you are now, more importantly, where you'd like to be. Then we'll make you some suggestions as to how we can help you bridge the gap. Based on today's meeting, by the time we get to the end of the meeting, you should be in a place to decide whether or not coaching fits best with what you have in mind for your business right now. Yes or no is absolutely fine. And if we don't think you're right for coaching, we'll tell you. Is that okay? Yes. They know now what they're going to get. Do your prospects know what they're going to get when they sit down with you? So that's a purpose statement. What does your purpose statement look like? Because great salespeople have a purpose and are on purpose. What do people buy? What do people buy on, logic or emotion? Emotion. What's the percentage, do you think? Nope. 80% emotion, 20% logic. So I know you work in an emotive industry, absolutely no doubt about that. But do you get to emotion in your sales process? No. Every prospect, by the way, has to tune into a radio station. What's the radio station? WIIFM. Does anybody know what WIIFM stands for? What's in it for me? That's the only reason somebody's going to buy from you, isn't it? There's got to be what's in it for me. So we start to think now we've got effective communication, we've got logic and emotion, we've got what's in it for me. So how do we get to that? Well, first of all, a great way to create emotion is to cause a change. Anybody like algebra? No. Okay. I'll tell you about it anyway. This is the formula for change. We'll start over here with the R. We are all resistant to change at some level, yeah? When a prospect encounters you, they're resistant. There's some level of sales resistance. So your sales process has to be designed to help take sales resistance down. Then we need to make the left-hand side of that equation outweigh resistance. So what does this stand for? D is dissatisfaction, V is vision. Dissatisfaction times vision plus the first steps, how you can help them, has to be greater than resistance. Otherwise, they don't buy. If there's no dissatisfaction, it doesn't matter how big the vision is, they won't buy. 0 times V is 0. If there's no vision but plenty of dissatisfaction, they still won't buy because 0 times vision is still 0. So part of your sales process needs to be about establishing that dissatisfaction and creating vision. Does that make sense? The bigger you can blow that gap apart in terms of dissatisfaction and vision, the more likely somebody is to buy from you, should it be right for them. So I need to wrap all this up and show you how to do it, don't I? This is where emotion kicks in, by the way, this D times V. When you get dissatisfaction out of somebody and you build their vision, emotion kicks in. Because they go, I'm here, I want to be there. So I want to take you back right to the very front when I told you about 4 types of salesperson. And I want to ask you another question. When you're in a typical sales meeting, I want you to write down the percentage of the time that you're talking. Write it down, on average. Doesn't have to be exact. Just write it down. So everybody got a number? Who's got 80%? Okay, keep your hand up. 70? Keep your hand up. 60? Keep your hand up. 50? Keep your hand up. 40? Okay, less than 40 is the rest. So what's that? 70, 75% of the room are talking more than 40% of the time. Yeah? Okay, the higher the number. Now, out of the people who wrote down a number higher than 40, who also wrote down that they were a problem solver? Quick show of hands. Right. You need to go back and refresh. I'm a D sometimes. You need to go back and refresh. And I'll tell you why. How do you solve people's problems when you're doing the majority of the talking? How do you find what their dissatisfaction and vision is when you're doing the majority of the talking? There's 2 of these and 1 of those for a reason. If your prospect is on radio, what's in it for me? What do they want to be doing? Talking about themselves. So what do you need to do to be a great salesperson? Ask great questions. So think about what's the percentage of statements versus questions in your sales process. And if it's a high proportion of statements, you're not a problem solver. Sorry, but you're not. You can't be. Then you're an assumption maker. Because you think you're giving them something that they want, but you don't really know what they want because you didn't take the time to ask them. Interesting, isn't it? That's why I love sales. So questions. Shut up and listen. That's why sales is simple. Because if you can communicate effectively, help somebody get to emotion by asking them questions in a way that they can respond to, more detail if they need it, less detail if they don't, and shut up and listen, you are helping them to buy. You're not selling to them. What do you think happens to your conversion rate when you shut up and listen? Up or down? Every time. Every time. We call them BFOs in Action Coach, blinding flashes of the obvious. Has anybody had any of those today yet? The little light bulb moment where you go, no! Yeah. So guess what? We've got a system for asking questions, and I'm going to show it to you now. It's called the question funnel. And this is it. So we start right at the top with open-ended questions. The what, why, when, where, how, why. Thank you very much. What, where, when, why with those ones there. That's difficult to say twice. So you've got to ask an open-ended question. And you'll know what a great open-ended question is for your business. I know what a great open-ended question is for my business. You've got to work the one out for yours. A great open-ended question for my business is, so where would you like your business to be 5 years from now? Oh, then I get more specific. Oh, you mentioned that. Tell me more about that. That's the specific question. I'm now starting to funnel down. Now, I'm giving you my example. You've got to work out how you use this, okay? You can systemize half a dozen questions as the first question after your purpose statement. Mine's the same every time. Where do you want your business to be 5 years from now? That's my system. And then they tell me, and I go, fantastic, thanks very much. Have you got a plan to get there? Because guess what the answer normally is? No. Right. So, based on what you told me, if we could help you get a plan to get your business to where you want it to be 5 years from now, how would that fit with what you have in mind? That would be great. Now, the reason why this is in red, this solutions, is where you start to transition from logic to emotion. Because if I ask, how would that be? That would be great. Am I at logic or am I at emotion? No. Logic. I might think I'm at emotion because I might assume that they've made an emotional connection in their head. If I've got a great plan to get me to where I want to go, wow, isn't that fantastic? But that's an assumption. And I learnt that at my peril 7 years ago because I made lots of friends but didn't get many clients. Right? It was an expensive learning, but I learnt it, thank God. So you've got to stay at that solutions level. So if we got your business there, what impact would that have on you? I'd be able to go and take a 2-week holiday. Fantastic, where would you go? Oh, I'd go to Mexico. When was the last time you took a 2-week holiday? I've not taken a 2-week holiday since I started the business. So if we could help you get that plan in place to move you towards a 2-week holiday, how would that fit with what you have in mind? That would be fantastic. Do you see how it works? Did they buy or did I sell? They bought. Who's starting to love selling a bit more? You see how easy it is? And then you go back up to the top, and I just used to imagine, you get a big rock, and you drop it in the water. This is this funnel. You've got to drop the rock in the water until it sinks. And the sink bit is when you hit emotion. When they turn around to you and go, that's why it's worth me buying from you, because it has this impact on me personally. Does that make sense? Then they bought. Great. So if we could do all that stuff, how would that fit with what you have in mind? There's a fantastic question. This play dumb and dig deep bit over here, that relates to solutions. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about the holiday in Mexico. What would you do? When would you go? When would you like to go? Who would you go with? That kind of stuff. That's the play dumb and dig deep. Of course, you know what they're going to do. But it's an assumption. They've got to tell you. So how does that fit with what you have in mind? That'd be awesome. Great. So based on what you told me, we'd be mad not to give it a go, wouldn't we? Ask for the sale. Yeah, we would. Great. So would you like it in red or blue? That's the detail question. Would you like it in red or blue? Well, I'm not sure when you check in with the temperature question. So what do you do? Okay. So what about? Ask another open-ended question. Take it back down the funnel, offer some more solutions, check in with the temperature again. They're talking about themselves. Do you think that you're going to have trouble keeping them? No, because they're talking about them. Now when you get to how does that fit with what you have in mind, that would be great. Would you like it in red or blue? It is that simple. We do a great job of overcomplicating sales. How do I know? Because I've done it. I tested and measured the complex bit. I prefer simple. Now you've got to work this out, how this works in your business using that funnel and going and looking at DISC and going and looking at modalities of communication and all that kind of stuff. But when you do, you'll have a real powerful sales process. And when you do that, systemize it, because then you can delegate it. And remember to ask for the sale, because you would not believe how many people forget to ask for the sale. It's quite incredible. They work real hard and then don't ask for the sale. That's nuts. But occasionally you might get an objection. Oh, well, I'd love to, but I haven't got enough time, or whatever it is. So we've got a process for that as well. And here's the process. First of all, yeah, I can understand what you're saying, Mr. Prospect. Would there be any other reason beside the fact that you haven't got enough time? And if they say no, so if you had enough time, would you go ahead? If they say no, okay, there must be another reason then. Could I just ask what that is? Because you can't take their first objection and assume that that's the only objection. You've got to isolate all of the objections so you can deal with them separately. So if they say no, so there must be another reason. Can I just ask what that is? Well, it's not just about time, actually. It's about what my partner would think. Okay, so would there be any other reason beside the fact that you haven't got enough time and your partner might have some concerns? No. Then you can address them individually. Does that make sense? You've got to isolate the objections. You've got to deal with them individually. So this is the process, because then you can take them back and invest some time looking at each of the objections. And when you feel that you've dealt with them effectively, you can then ask for the sale again. Now what you'll find is if you're testing and measuring your process, by the way, you're going to get some common objections. You'll find your number one objection. You possibly already know what that is. So guess what you can do? Position it away earlier in the process, because sales is all about positioning, telling the prospect what they have to expect. Just educate them better. If you know what the most common objection is, address it before you get to asking for the sale, rather than when it's a bit too late. But again, you have to test and measure your process. Okay? So that's half a day course in 45 minutes. Any questions? More stunned silence. That's the second time I've done that today. Any questions? Back. What's the one thing many salespeople miss? Asking for the sale. Anything else? Any other questions?
One thing I sort of struggle a little bit with,
Yep.
sort of like being that a little bit more salesy, is where you complete the wedding, so you then go and edit the images, you know then they're coming for a viewing, is turning that from, okay, I've been your friend, you've done a great job, into the salesperson. And that's where I struggle a little bit of switching over, of making them, sort of taking it from that, okay, they know they're there to buy something, but that's hard.
Okay. So put yourself in their shoes. So, how do you feel about the photos? Who else would you like to have a copy of these? It's just helping them understand. Because if they walk away having not bought enough photos to give to all of their friends and family, they're going to be gutted, aren't they? So there's plenty of opportunities to help them buy more or help them buy what they really need. Maybe you could put a checklist together where you can help them. These are the most common things that we find that people tend to forget when they come and buy their photos. So would it be okay if I just take you through that quick checklist just to make sure you've got everything that you need? Does that make sense? Because then it's systemized and you sort of almost blame the form. You go, look, all these guys, well, these are the things that they tend to miss. So I'm just going to ask you the questions to make sure you get all that you need. Do you think they're going to say no? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Same case of wedding dresses.
Yep.
Very emotive purchase.
Yes.
Very expensive purchase.
Yes. Never bought one personally.
Most girls, most of them want to sleep on it, have a think about it.
What, the dress?
Yes. So how do you try and get a decision without alienating them and putting them off forever? Because most of them want to shop around because
Yeah.
it's usually an enjoyable thing.
Yeah.
And say it's the first time they've come into your shop, they often don't, they've no intention of making a decision there and then at their first appointment.
Okay.
So how do you try and, I'm sure that by telling as many people as we do to go and have a sleep on it or think about it and come back to us, we probably do lose a proportion of sales.
Sure.
But we don't want to alienate them at the same time by trying to get them to sign up to it.
So, and I understand that, absolutely. What I'd do is, it's quite an overwhelming thing, I guess, isn't it? When somebody comes in and they're looking for a really expensive purchase, so they're thinking, oh my goodness, what questions do I need to be asking? Well, for me, the better you educate somebody, the more likely they are to be loyal to you. So can you help educate them better to almost position yourself as the expert? Do you know what I mean? So you position yourself as the expert as what we find is these are the things that most people sometimes forget to think about when they're buying a dress. So maybe put a little ebook or a little flyer together and go, these are the top 7 questions you've got to answer when you're thinking about a dress. These are the things that people forget about. If you've given them that and it's branded with you, so they're constantly referencing you or helping them to buy, even if they're going and looking somewhere else, what's the percentage chance that they're going to come back to you because you've positioned yourself in that way? Possibly higher. And I've used that plenty of times and it does work. Does that answer your question?
I was just going to say, when I went to go buy my wedding dress, one of the things that took me back to the first dress, I literally went to the first shop I ever bought my dress from.
Yep.
I don't know whether this will help. But one of the things that made me go back to that girl and back to that dress store was the fact that I had said this is the first store I'm going to, and she actually recommended 2 other dress places to go to.
Sure.
They've got lovely dresses there, and they've got lovely dresses. And we worked with them at this bar and that bar. The whole time I was in that store, all I kept thinking about was how nice that other girl was, and I was like,
Yeah.
dress.
Absolutely, and just build the relationship. And if you understand DISC, and you can build better rapport with people. Any other questions quickly? One more maybe, if there is one.
You keep talking about asking for the sale.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Can you be a bit more specific?
Yeah, ask for the sale. Would you like to buy now?
Okay.
It really is that simple.
It's still that, yeah.
Yeah, so that means you're not.
Not always. No.
Yeah, okay, well do it then. Try it, you never know, it might work. Could you fill in the feedback forms quickly for me, please? And thanks very much indeed for your time. If you've got any questions, I'm around. Otherwise, thank you.